A lot of people didn't like the original Silent Hill movie, or the creative differences that it took. You might have expected it to have come out right after the first game because of how many similarities it has, or maybe that it came out right after Shattered Memories, but no, it comes out right after Silent Hill 4 is released. And it takes 50 million to make this movie. However, it was pretty profitable because it came back with at least double that, making 100 million in total. And for those of you that are gamers, you might be wondering, okay, these first four games are fantastic. However, the tank controls are frustrating as shit. So are the bosses. How can someone make a movie out of this in the first place, you know? Well, let's dig into it. The idea of the film adaptation of Silent Hill, the first game, was voiced by Christoph Gans for the first time to producer Samuel Hadida during the filming of Brotherhood of the Wolf in 2001. Hadida, knowing the game's rich visual aesthetics, believed that eerie storytelling matched Gans' encyclopedic knowledge of cinematography. Gans became acquainted with the video game series approximately 6 years before the release of his film, and initially wanted to adapt the second game, since it was the most emotional of all four and the most beloved by fans. Well, it looks like he gets to do that now. Gans compared it to the myth of Orpheus, who descended into the underworld after Eurydice. However, he said that Silent Hill 2 was not the real Silent Hill. There is no mythology, and the city only played the backdrop for the unfolding story. As a result, he realized that it was impossible to film an adaptation of the second game without saying a word about the origin of the city. According to Gans, the first game captivated him with its extraordinary plot. It was so completely unique and absolutely frightening that it was worthy to become the basis for a real film. Many of his entourage were surprised at the opinion that a banal video game can scare someone. To this, the director replied that Silent Hill was one of the scariest experiences he ever had. He called it an experiment with a unique and independent world, which is both beautiful and terrible at the same time. Even before the release of Silent Hill 2, Gans sent a ton of letters to copyright holders, but received no response. He presented his vision of the film and how important the games are to him in a 37-minute video with Japanese subtitles, which was shown at a meeting of the Konami board of directors. Representatives of the company realized that Gans was the only one among the major studios fighting for the right to film adaptation who understood the essence of the game, and the director received the filming rights after 2 months, which he sought for a total of 5 years. The publishers insisted that the project retain the original plot and setting. Gans had not previously directed any game adaptations, and stated that the process is completely unlike anything else. According to him, in projects of this type, the most important challenge is to bring the background story in the game to the foreground. Hadida said that Silent Hill is something outside of cinema. He believed that the game was so popular because everyone felt something unique when playing it, and the film only enhances that feeling. The creators have also said that the film is a tribute to the horror genre. Gans considered this film to be halfway between science fiction, Clive Barker's books, and hardcore horror. When the decision was made to adapt Silent Hill, Gans and Hadida phoned screenwriter Roger Avery. They outlined their plans and offered to write a script. "It's not so easy," Avery said. "When you're going to film something, especially a game, you need to be ready to take everything apart and then put it together in a new way. The only thing that remains of the original material is the main idea, the concept, which all your actions are subordinated to." It was decided to combine in-game monsters with creatures invented by the film crew. Gans tried to stick as close as possible to the original source, while Avery saw it as his main task to convey the spirit of the game. He kept some storylines, and tried to combine the rest of the elements into new compositions. Thus, the director was more faithful to the creator's intention, and the screenwriter preferred to interpret the original material broadly. Since Gans had already formed the concept of the feature plot of the film, he sent the screenwriter several discs with atmospheric videos to point Avery's work in the right direction, as well as the developments compiled by himself and Nicolas Beaucrief. They were written in French, but the scriptwriter was required to translate them into English, write dialogues, and change a few conceptual factors. Avery did not limit himself to acquaintance with the presented film library and personally went through all entries of the game series. All changes made by Avery were translated into Christoph's native language. A rough draft of the work was ready by October 2004. Nevertheless, due to the complete absence of male characters, the script was rejected by the producers. Only after the script was modified to include Sean Bean's role and subplot was it approved. Avery recalled that as soon as they received the stupid note from the studio, Gans got angry. Yet later, they realized that this storyline can be made interesting and emphasize the peculiarities of the perception of reality. As a result, the plot became a combination of the first game with separate elements of the second and third. Gans elaborated, We weren't trying to put all 3 games into a 2-hour production. This is an adaptation of the first Silent Hill. However, there are so many interesting details in the following installments that it was impossible to resist. Avery regularly received letters from fans, whom he called crazy. He saved some messages, the senders of which claim that only they can write the script, and if Roger does not cope with his task, then he will be found and killed. Avery believed these threats were very real. Fans sent him their very own versions of scripts to his mailbox, but Avery, saying that it all smacks of delirium, deleted them without reading. Avery used the town of Centralia, Pennsylvania as a prototype for the town of Silent Hill. He commented that as a child, his father, who was a mining engineer, used to tell him stories about Centralia, where coal deposits from the local mine caught fire and released toxic gases into the town, as well as creating sinkholes when the abandoned mine shafts and coal seams began to collapse. This forced the town to evacuate forever. Avery was fascinated since childhood by the idea that fires underneath the town would be burning for such a long time. The film acquired its working title in honor of the city, Centralia. Samuel Hadida tried to approach the writing of the script with the same feelings that arose during the gameplay of Silent Hill. The script also required the creation of a logical splicing between the various levels so that a person not familiar with the game could easily understand what was happening on the screen. The creators were guided by the impressions of the fans, who suggested what impressed them more, what kept them in suspense, which characters seemed most effective. At the heart of the plot, there is a search for a daughter, which leads the main character. Roger liked long dialogues, while Christoph preferred to shorten them as much as possible. In the end, they managed to achieve balance. Actions accounted for 30 pages, in which Rose explores the world of Silent Hill. There were long debates over the ending. For the ending, Avery wanted to use the theme of forgiveness, while Gans wanted to see a darker ending, the key message of which would be revenge. As a result, Avery gave up as he was convinced by the director's logical arguments. After taking the script, Rhoda Mitchell read only 10 pages of text. She was alone in her apartment, and by her own admission, she felt uncomfortable with fear. She finished reading it only a week later in the Light of the Sun and said, "That's what attracted me to the piece as well, because it was definitely a page-turner, and it freaked me out." Sean Bean also found the plot scary. In contrast to these impressions, Laurie Holden liked the script. She deemed it spectacular, complex, multi-level with wonderful themes, and therefore interesting to work with. Deborah Kara Unger called it Alice in Wonderland meets Dante's Inferno. An integral part of the Silent Hill universe is the reality and unreality of the city. Silent Hill exists simultaneously in 4 different variations: the city of the 1970s, Silent Hill in the present, Silent Hill in the fog, and then the darkness. 2 of the above measurements are based on temporal changes. One represents the city of 30 years ago and is used only in flashbacks. The other displays the current state of the city to which Christopher goes in search of his wife and daughter. The 2 remaining dimensions include a foggy day in which Rose searches for her daughter, symbolizing purgatory, and a gloomy day consisting of enveloping darkness, which is the embodiment of hell. Gans reported that in his work, he tried to discover new dimensions of space and time and metaphysical and mystical aspects. He stated, "We're not trying to explain everything, as I prefer people to find meaning in the story themselves. It is much more pleasant to enjoy the understatement. It's kind of a playful invitation to be smart." According to executive producer Andrew Mason, Silent Hill is a story of what happens in the moments between death and fate. The film talks about people who deny their own fate and therefore fall into the tribe of alternate dimensions. It deals with the terror of loneliness, the fear of the dark, the fear of taking responsibility for your own evil side, and the fear of your own fate. The game created a sense of constant threat, while the film seeks to reproduce that experience for a wider audience. The film's themes include motherhood, faith, and persecution. In addition to Rose, the key characters are their childless Sybil, Dahlia, and Christabella, the latter of whom lost her child, believing that abandoning motherhood is a blessing for society. Gans stated that motherhood in the film is about immaculate conception, motherhood achieved in the noblest way. By the time Silent Hill comes to its denouement, which takes place in the sanctuary of the sect, the film turns into a cautionary tale warning against religious fanaticism. The director noted that monotheistic Abrahamic religions constantly attack the idea of femininity, but the film, at the same time, is not moralizing. Gans described this concept of the town's connection to the child less than the cult. It's a town of people trapped in dark dreams, and she inflicts onto the town what those people did to her. That is, to me, the meaning of the darkness. The appearance of the town is corrupted in the way that her own flesh is wounded. He further expands on Alessa's connection to the alternate reality seen in the film, saying that the alternate reality is Alessa's head. It's interesting because the town itself mirrors this fractured psychology, different dimensions, different doubles of the same person. And speaking about the creatures, Gans said that these monsters are damned. With a poetic direction of the term, they are a little like the Japanese phantoms, i.e., residues of forgotten feelings as strong as hatred or guilt. The monsters in the game were not really monsters, but rather a mockery of human beings. The real monsters are the people, the cultists who tortured Alessa. When I approached the film, I knew that it was impossible to represent the monsters as simply beasts that jump on you. The appearance of the games in the series was largely influenced by Adrian Lyne's film Jacob's Ladder, especially the subway and hospital scenes. Gans believed that the film crew was able to create a unique piece that did not rely on the style of Lyne's film. Gans' film adaptation is not an imitation of Lyne's film, as Silent Hill has long evolved into a completely separate phenomenon that exists on its own. The film was influenced by the work of Sergio Leone and David Lean. The City of the 70s was created under the inspiration of the films Lawrence of Arabia and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And in general, it was filmed under the influence of various works ranging from a book of pictures about Chernobyl to The Matrix. In the film, Gans paid homage to the works of Salvador Dali, Hans Belmer, Francis Bacon, Jean Cocteau, Umberto Giacometti, Clive Barker, H.P. Lovecraft, David Cronenberg, and Michael Mann. According to the director's initial idea, 6 pyramid heads were to be present inside the church in the film's denouement, slaughtering the cult members with various weapons, which were supposed to be an allusion to the events of Dante's Inferno. When budgetary and time constraints prevented this ending from being filmed, Gans created the new ending in which Alessa kills cultists with barbed wire. This sequence was inspired by the anime Yorosu Kidoji. In one of the scenes, Rose tries to remember how to get to the hospital room and studying the map says, down, down, left, right, left, right. Valery Korneyev considered the scene a reference to the Konami code, describing it as a barely noticeable curtsy towards the adult gamer audience. The ringtone on Rose's phone matches that of Solid Snake every time he receives a coded message. The director drew parallels between Avery's script and episodes of The Twilight Zone. Based on the film, a literary adaptation of the same name was written in Japanese by Paula Edgewood and Osamu Makino. The director noted that in the game, every character is very emotional and vulnerable, but at the same time the characters were called flat and schematic. After they were put on paper, Gans realized that the result was a failure. The actors represented more expansive and complex personas, so many of the characters were revamped. The filmmakers wanted all the characters in the film to appear gray and murky, as if they were in different dimensions simultaneously. When selecting actors, Christoff paid attention to those people who worked in independent cinema, as they brought a different quality. The protagonist of the original video game is Harry Mason. The director of the film made a significant departure from the original source, and replaced the main character with a woman, Rose da Silva. Christoff and the writers suddenly realized that they were working with a completely feminine world. Gans explained that if you look closely at the game and do not take into account the appearance, you can see that the characters behave more like women than like men. They are worried about the child, they are very sensitive and often cry. All this is stereotypical for mother characters. The whole movie is about motherhood, the director said. He believed that in any sinister story there must be saving grace. This change, despite the fact that Gans himself is a fan of the media franchise, did not bother him in the least because the game is a game, and the film is a film. The creators spent a lot of time and effort to find an actress for the role of Rose, sophisticated and defenseless, who had the right amount of sensitivity in her character. They needed an actress with a vulnerable image, full of determination. The audience had to worry about Rose, and at the same time, admire her ability to get out of various difficult situations with honor. Mila Jovovich and Meg Ryan auditioned for the role, but in the end, the choice fell on Australian Radha Mitchell, previously known for her roles in 2004 films such as Woody Allen's Melinda and Melinda, Tony Scott's Man on Fire, and Mark Foster's Finding Neverland. Mitchell herself became interested in the project mainly because of Gans' personality. She was deeply impressed by his previous film, Brotherhood of the Wolf. The executive producer of the film, Andrew Mason, noted that Mitchell had the freshness, energy, and joy of life necessary for the main character, who will lead the audience through a terrible world. Gans characterized Mitchell as a sophisticated and elegant 60s styles actress, reminiscent of Grace Kelly and Mia Farrow. Rhoda said that during the filming, she had to run a lot around the set and shout Sharon in 50 different ways. Also during the filming process, her attitude towards the character changed. She stated that there is something feminist in the concept of this film, since all female characters are in some kind of fantasy world, while men are only in reality. For the main character, about 100 costumes were created, each of which slightly darker than the previous. In the beginning, Rose is dressed in a very light dress, and in the end, a blood red, which symbolizes her revolution. 10-year-old Jodelle Furlan played 3 roles at once. Her character exists in the Silent Hill universe in several incarnations. Sharon is the embodiment of all the best that was in the immolated Alessa, the suffering Alessa, and the demonic dark Alessa. The filmmakers intended to cast 3 different girls for these roles, but nevertheless, a young actress was found capable of portraying these roles at the same time. Gans saw Furlan as the ideal actress, drawing attention to her performance in the Kingdom Hospital miniseries and Terry Gilliam's Tideland. After Jodelle made her audition statement, "I've always wanted to play the devil," and the director watched 15 hours of footage featuring the actress, she was approved for the role. Furlong, who had 26 acting credits at the time, reported that she has already played several girls similar to her character from the film. "I usually get creepy roles like Dark Alessa." Gans supported Furlong's performances with a combination of charm and general direction. The role of Sean Bean, who plays Rose's husband, Kim Coates, who plays the police officer Gucci, and all the related storylines were missing from the initial script. They were introduced after the producers familiarized themselves with the initial version of the script and announced them to the director about the need to introduce male characters into the film. Sean Bean was the only one of all the actors in the lead roles who did not even try to play the game. He just saw the game packaging. He described his character as someone who was constantly between despair and determination to see the case through. Christopher tries to get to the bottom of it, no matter what it costs him. He is a successful businessman and a loving husband who senses the presence of evil. There is a certain nostalgia in his relationship with Rose. The actor for the role of Christopher was selected as the last one. The character was named after the director. The prototype of Christopher was the game's protagonist, Harry. Coates considered Silent Hill to be the strangest film he had ever starred in. His character officer Gucci's name is briefly mentioned in one of the notes found in the game. In it, he is described as a narcotics officer who suddenly dies of a heart attack. The character of Sybil Bennett, a brave, bold, and fearless police officer, is portrayed by Laurie Holden. The team behind the film were looking for an actress who would evoke sympathy from the audience when she sacrifices her own life to save Rose and Sharon. In the game, Sybil can also die a violent death. The parasite-infected police officer is killed by Harry. Holden tried to play Silent Hill at the request of the director, but did not progress beyond the main character's first encounter with Sybil at the cafe. According to Holden, there is something of a lone wolf in Sybil. The character bears a scar in her soul from her devoutly religious mother who passed away when Sybil was 13, which is why she rejects religion and remains lonely. Afterwards, Bennett finds her calling to serve and protect. She wants to be like a mother to the children she saves. Holden stated that at the time, it was the coolest action role she'd ever played. She noted that the character has a kind heart. She is very strong, but very misunderstood. In order to resemble the character more, Holden's long hair was cut. Gans cast Holden after seeing her in The Majestic, stating, "In The Majestic, she was beautifully feminine, and I cast her so I could show her other side, make her strong and sleek." Dahlia Gillespie, played by Deborah Kara Unger, was taken from the original game but underwent significant reworking. In the game, Dahlia is portrayed as a mysterious occult fanatic who attempts to summon God by burning her own daughter, while in the film those qualities are transferred to another character named Christabella. Unger stated that she immensely enjoyed playing this role, believing that the portrayal of Dahlia is closely aligned with the profound essence of the game. She did not progress further than the beginning of the video game, but relied on materials she found on websites, including character analyses. Unger described her character as a crazy, slightly enigmatic prophet who gains with him through suffering, and compared her to Cassandra and John Proctor from the play The Crucible. She immediately accepted the role, which was specifically written for her, even without reading the script. She later referred to her work as an extraordinary psychological journey. Mason stated that Deborah's character had to reach extremes and appear slightly peculiar. Mitchell believed that Unger added a lot to her character, making her appear more realistic. Played by Alice Krieg, Christabella is a cultist and the main antagonist of the film. The character's name is taken from the Silent Hill Dying Inside comic, where it belonged to a girl who was killed by fanatics. Christabella's portrayal incorporates some traits from Dahlia Gillespie and Claudia Wolf from Silent Hill 3. In contrast to Rose, the antagonist combines elegance and violence. Initially, Alice Krieg did not like the script. The actress asked, "What is this? Is this sort of science fiction horror?" Krieg was unaware that it was based on a video game. She expressed concern regarding the linguistic intricacies associated with the character, finding her impactful dialogue challenging to accurately portray. To prepare for her role, Krieg read the book The End of Days by Erna Paris, a book about tyranny during the Spanish Inquisition. Mitchell noted that the actress was very different from her character. Alice is incredibly playful, sweet, and generous. She's got this enthusiasm and the imagination of a child. The producers stated that Krieg was able to breathe life into a toy-like character that can easily stumble and become a caricature. The director approved her casting based on her performances in the films Institute Benjamenta, Twilight of the Ice Nymphs, and Star Trek First Contact. Principal photography commenced on April 25, 2005, and ended 3 months later on July 22nd. It took place in various locations in Canada, including Brantford, Hamilton, and Brampton in Ontario, Winnipeg, and Manitoba, St. George and New Brunswick, as well as on sound stages in Toronto and on location in Alma College. The developers of the series Team Silent oversaw the entire production process of the film and collaborated closely with the production team, approving or rejecting decisions made by the director, screenwriter, and artists. As a result, the city's appearance was recreated with attention to the smallest details, down to errors in English names of the stores. The filming was done using a crane camera. The technology itself was improved to accurately simulate the operation of the virtual camera from the game. Mitchell had to tap into her own subconscious to enhance realism, inducing feelings of anxiety and pain in herself to subsequently embody those emotions during the filming. She admitted that encounters with the unknown were somewhat surreal. To depict fear, she asked the production designer to increase the volume of the sound made by the approaching monster through a microphone. This helped make her acting more interactive rather than simply reacting to lines. The varying weather conditions, ranging from freezing cold to extreme heat, did not have a negative impact on the actors' performances. After delivering the film for film editing to the studio, Gans expected to receive at least 10 pages of notes regarding the film's required editing. However, contrary to his expectations, the only comment was about the Australian accent of Mitchell and the English accent of Bean, which were too noticeable in 3 scenes of the film. According to him, the producers were shocked as they had never seen anything like it before. The next step was passing censorship. Samuel Hadida was concerned about several scenes, especially the death of Sybil and the barbed wire killing of Christabella, as well as Anna's flaying. The director said, "I wanted to create an unforgettable scene that shows a person being burned alive on a stake. I wanted to avoid using a mannequin instead of the actress." In the end, the committee provided documents marked as acceptable. This decision was supported by 3 reasons. The entire story takes place in a fictional world, the plot revolves around a woman trying to save her daughter, and the film hardly uses firearms. Subsequently, the film was banned for children under 15 in England and children under 12 in France. All work on the film was completed 10 days before its release in US theaters. Silent Hill contains 756 special effects shots. In total, $4 million was spent on them. Sony bought the distribution rights for $14 million for the United States and Latin America to be released under its TriStar Pictures genre film subsidiary. On December 5, 2005, TriStar announced a competition to create the best poster, targeting fans of the series. Anyone could download several photos from the official website welcometosilenthill.com and use them as a basis to create the final image. All competition entries were posted on the internet on January 4, 2006, and a voting process took place. On January 17th, specialists from the company selected 5 out of 50 works. On January 20th, the finalists were announced, and 2 days later, the final version of the poster was chosen. The Japanese trailer of the film is voiced by Joe Ramirez. The composers of the film are Akira Yamaoka and Jeff Dana. The music for the film is borrowed from the soundtracks of the first 4 games. The only track that does not belong to these albums is Johnny Cash's composition of Ring of Fire. Yamaoka mostly kept his own melodies intact as he wanted to maintain similarities to the game adaptation. The soundtrack, which included vocal tracks, was not released as a standalone release. The film in total lasts 127 minutes. According to information from several publications, there allegedly exists a director's cut of the film that was 3.5 hours long, but it was shortened by over 90 minutes at the insistence of the producers, as distributors did not want to deal with a horror film of such length. Gans also worked on creating a censored version of the film which lasts less than 80 minutes. However, according to him, it will never be shown to the public. The director had no control over the release of the film outside of the home region. He referred to the DVD version of the film released in America as pitiful, citing the catastrophic quality of compression. He spent 8 days optimizing the rendering and color grading for the release in the second region. In an interview, the director stated that the only scene that didn't make it into the final version of the film was a brief conversation sequence involving Christabella in a church with 2 strangers. However, he also noted the presence of another unfinished fragment. The meeting of Anna originally featured her being attacked by an armless man near the hotel, during which she is saved by Sybil and Rose, and the wounded creature crawls under a car to disappear into a manhole. Due to budget concerns, choreographer Roberto Campanella was sent home for the day, and the director was not satisfied with the footage. To rectify this, the scene was simplified and rewritten without the monster. Mitchell stated that after the completion of principal photography, the opening scene of the film was also reshot. The film was shot in the Super 35 film format, except the scenes with the darkness, which were filmed with high-definition video, because of its ability to cleanly capture light and digitally manipulate it in post-production. The film contains about 107 different sets, specifically used to represent the different versions of the town. The bipedal creatures in the film were played by professional actors or dancers covered in latex and prosthetic makeup. After filming, over 619 visual effects shots were used in the film, with the most prominent uses being the fog that drenches the town, the transitions to darkness, and the insects that surround Pyramid Head. Rotoscoping was used to add the fog and ash effects to shots including live-action actors, and the film made extensive use of set extensions as backdrops. To maintain the feel of the games, Gans had the sound designer of the original Silent Hill, Yamaoka, flown to the set several times. Additionally, Gans had a 40-inch television brought into the set, to which he attached a PlayStation 2. Gans then played the original Silent Hill on the system so that the actors and cinematographers could see how Gans wanted to emulate various camera angles and movements. Silent Hill was released at theaters on April 21st, 2006, in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Ireland. France, Belgium, Hungary, and Greece also saw April releases. It was released in Australia on August 31st, 2006. The film was later released in 19 other countries in 2006, which include Russia, Germany, Spain, Italy, Japan, and Mexico. The film's poster of a mouthless Alessa was the subject of some vandalism, with many malefactors drawing cartoon mouths, smiling, screaming, sporting vampire fangs, etc., or placing stickers where a mouth would be. On August 22, 2006, Sony and TriStar Pictures released the DVD, Blu-ray, and UMD versions of the film in North America. The DVD and Blu-ray were released in both anamorphic widescreen and pan and scan versions, and both include a Dolby Digital audio track. The releases also included a number of special features, such as film previews and a 6-part making-of documentary. The film was also released on UMD for Sony PlayStation's Portable on August 22, 2006. There are no special features, but the disc includes a 1.78 widescreen format, Dolby Digital 2.0, and subtitles. An HD DVD was released in Germany by Concord Home Entertainment on August 22, 2007, containing the film encoded in the VC1 video codec and has the main audio track in DTS HD, retaining the film aspect ratio of 2.35 to 1. On July 9, 2019, Shout Factory released a 2-disc collector's edition Blu-ray of Silent Hill through their Scream Factory label. In addition to containing previous special features, the collector's edition also featured new bonus content, including cast and crew interviews, a commentary track with cinematographer Dan Lautzen, and a new HD remaster. Silent Hill opened in 2,932 theaters and earned $20 million in the US on its opening weekend, and opened at number 1 at the US box office. The film grossed over $46 million in the US and $100 million worldwide. It sold 1,300,000 DVDs in 4 weeks, grossing $22 million and making the total gross of the film jump to $120 million worldwide. Silent Hill has landed in the top 10 highest-grossing film adaptations of video game properties listed on Box Office Mojo. At number 9, grossing $47 million in the US, just behind Resident Evil Extinction, which grossed $50. According to the distributor, advanced screenings of Silent Hill were never given to critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, 32% of 107 critics have given the film a positive review, and the average rating is 4.8. The site's critical consensus reads, Silent Hill is visually impressive, but as with many video game adaptations, it's plagued by inane dialogue, a muddled plot, and an overlong runtime. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 31 out of 100 based on 21 critics, indicating generally unfavorable reviews. Now that's some trivia right there. Tom Cruise was interested in obtaining the film rights. Could you imagine that? That would be fucking insane, dude. Naturally, the Silent Hill wiki itself will have more information about the film, so that's where I went. There are several popular misconceptions about the film's story. Here are some clarified. Rose, Sharon, and Sybil died near the beginning of the film in the car motorcycle crash and are trapped in purgatory in the ending. There is no proof this is true. While the fog world is indeed symbolic of purgatory, Rose and Sharon are not dead, as proven in the sequel, but simply trapped in the alternate plane of existence. This is likely due to Sharon being the recombined Alyssa, wanting to be alone with her new mother. In addition, considering that all the cultists are alive, it's only logical to assume that Rose is too. There were no bodies found in the car, and Officer Gucci states that there weren't even any signs of trauma. If they died, their bodies would have been found. Dark Alyssa is the devil. Dark Alyssa is often confused as being a literal incarnation of the Christian devil. The confusion is so widespread that Christoph Gans commented on it in the film's commentary, saying that the character is meant to be seen from a Japanese perspective, the Japanese form of a devil, not a Christian one. The cultists are the Order from the game canon. Gans has stated that they are two separate cults and that the Order is not the cult in the film. He implies that Jennifer Carroll was burned alive by the movie's cult, tying the Order to the film cult, and says that they have opposite beliefs. The Brethren are witch hunters who kill convicted witches to prevent the apocalypse. This is something which Revelation apparently retconned. The cultists are Christian. This misconception probably occurs because Christabella quotes a part of Revelation 20 from the Bible. Their symbol looks like a crucifix, and their history of witch hunting is reminiscent of the Salem witch trials. In addition, in the game canon, Order member Jennifer Carroll was burned by Christians, and she was also burned by the cultists in the film canon. However, the film's original script suggests the cult is a religion known as Manichaeism, and Christabella openly insults Christian beliefs. We're not Christians, we're Manichaeans. The testaments of Matthew and the other disciples of Jesus are what led to the end of days that we are now in. We followed the old ways. Separation of spirit and flesh are the doctrines by which we live, and our faith has never failed us. It keeps the darkness of hell at bay. There are several changes made to the film during script rewrites. For example, Rose was originally supposed to have black hair. In the first and earliest version of the script, the De Silva family was the De Salvo family, a probable reference to Andrew De Salvo. Sharon was the biological daughter of Rose and Chris and was blonde, while Alessa had black hair. There is no mention of Sharon being connected to or part of Alessa. Sharon was originally dying from a hereditary disease, not sleepwalking. Rose intended to take Sharon to a faith healer in an unknown town and had never heard of Silent Hill. Silent Hill's location in the original script is never stated. Dark Alessa was originally a simple astral projection of Alessa, not an incarnation of her dark side. Dark Alessa never says, "I have many names," and she doesn't refer to herself as the dark part of Alessa. Instead, when asked who she is, her answer is Alessa. She then goes on to say that this whole world is Alessa. Alessa was shown to be in possession of vast paranormal powers, including an inhuman scream she would emit when in pain. While she still has unnatural powers in the final version of the film, it is severely downplayed, and the first time she is shown exhibiting her powers is when she breaks the chains when being burned. Pendulums appeared in the hospital scenes. The original climax of the film was very different from the one that was shot. Originally, 6 pyramid heads were supposed to rise into the church and slaughter the cultists, while one held Dark Alessa and let her dance in the blood of the dying fanatics. Rose returned to the real world after saving Sharon, and she and Chris decided to have another child. A later version of the script was released, closer to the final version of the film. Some scenes in the script were filmed and then removed. Sharon is now Rose's and Chris's non-biological daughter like the final film. There are scenes of Sharon institutionalized at a psychiatric center, being examined by doctors for her condition. The scene where Rose is attacked by the Grey Children ends with Rose scrambling into the doorway of a diner rather than the bowling alley. She wakes up inside the diner rather than the bowling alley, which would have echoed the first game. Sybil talks about her background with Rose. While searching for the Grand Hotel, a scene of Sybil smashing a building window and taking a map was cut. The scene of Anna being attacked by a lying figure was cut. Sybil was supposed to come to Anna's rescue. Sybil, Anna, and Rose explore a mannequin factory. Red Pyramid is inside. Christabella refers to Dark Alessa as Semil. In the flashback scene in the hospital, a scene of Alessa going on a midwich school field trip and causing butterflies to act abnormally was cut. In the flashback scene in the hospital, Christabella speaks more on being Dahlia's sister and Alessa's aunt. In 2006, Christoph Gans announced that a sequel to Silent Hill had been ordered, that Roger Avery was developing the screenplay with acclaimed writer Neil Gaiman. He expressed doubt that he would be able to direct his obligations with Onimusha interfere, which they did. If I cannot take on Silent Hill 2 myself, the director who does would need to continue in the same style as the first film. One does not want to make a Hollywood-style movie, and I think that it makes sense if the director of the sequel is European, in the best-case scenario, French. Gaiman contradicted Gans in a blog post stating that he had not been asked to co-write the film, and was unaware of the rumors until people asked him about his involvement. In July 2007, Avery clarified that he would not return for the sequel unless Gans was involved. By 2008, an outline for the sequel had been written. It was set to enter pre-production once Avery finished the script, but development came to a halt after he was charged with vehicular manslaughter. In November 2009, producer Don Carmody said he was unsure if Avery would be returning, but intended the film to be more accessible to the movie-going public. Gans refused to return, believing the producers wanted a film more in the vein of Resident Evil than what he had in mind. In November 2010, it was announced that the sequel would be titled Silent Hill Revelation 3D, an adaptation of Silent Hill 3 written and directed by M.J. Bassett. Sean Bean, Deborah Kerr Unger, and Radha Mitchell reprised their roles, with newcomers Adelaide Clemens, Kit Harington, Martin Donovan, Malcolm McDowell, and Carrie Ann Moss leading the cast. The film was released on 25th October 2012 to negative reviews, opening at number 5 to the box office and grossing a worldwide total of $55 million by the end of its run. In January 2020, Gans announced that he was writing a third film, with the involvement of producer Victor Hadida. He finished the screenplay while isolated during the COVID-19 pandemic, as a reboot not tied to the previous films. He stated that his sensibilities had evolved since 2006, and he wanted to make a Silent Hill film for a 2023 audience. The project is not a Silent Hill as I imagined it in 2006, It is clear that today's horror cinema no longer resembles the horror cinema of 2006. Good for that matter. Not that 2007 horror cinema wasn't good, but every genre is going through an evolution. I'm trying to take into account what I've been able to see recently, which is more original and more surprising in terms of horror films, and to see if in Silent Hill there are the seeds or even the expression of that. Gans wrote the script under the supervision of Konami, who greenlit the film as part of a global policy to get Silent Hill back into the public consciousness, breaking the hiatus that followed the cancellation of Silent Hills in 2015. At the start of the film, when Rose pauses under the underpass while looking for Sharon, several recognizable items are spray painted on the wall in the background, including the GMC logo and the Beatles. During a wide shot, spray painted in the uppermost right corner are the words Cheryl and Wolf, a reference to Cheryl Mason and Claudia Wolf. The shot then cuts to a close-up of Cheryl. The film features various references to Silent Hill 3. Sharon's line, "Don't talk to strangers," quotes Heather's first encounter with Douglas. A symbol very similar to the seal of Metatron can be seen twice in the Underworld version of Midwich Elementary, when Dark Alessa appears at her desk scribbling furiously. Throughout the film, Brahms is spelled Brahms. It is unknown if this is an intentional artistic choice or an error. Ironically, Sybil Bennett is the only one to actually say the word Brahms in the whole movie, while her last name is misspelled in the promotional newspaper for the movie. Most of the monsters featured are taken from Silent Hill 2, the Lying Figure, Armless Man, the Bubblehead Nurse, Dark Nurse, and Pyramid Head, or Red Pyramid. The mannequin creature is also somewhat referenced, as there are two scenes that prominently feature broken down mannequins. Otherwise, the only monsters adapted from the first game are the Mumbler, or Grey Child, and the Creepers. The only original creature featured in the film is Colin the Janitor, who was thought up the day before his scenes were shot. Rhoda Mitchell didn't wash her hair throughout most of the filming to help the dirty, unwashed look of her character. Could you imagine 3 months of that? Holy fuck. The character of Dark Alessa is never credited in the movie cast list. However, she is named as one of Jodell's characters on the official site, in interviews and in the film's press kit. The scene with the lying figure Armless Man is highly relatable to when James Sunderland first encounters a monster. In the movie, the creature comes from a junkyard, while in the game, the lying figure is also spotted in a dirty, junked, and closed-off area. After the Armless Man dies, more of the monsters can be spotted emerging above the distant trash. In the film, birds appear to signal the upcoming otherworld shift. When Rose first enters the alley, disturbed ravens take flight just before the sirens begin to blare, similar to the scene just outside the church. As well, when the brethren endeavor to break through the door Rose was behind, a bird within a cage becomes frantic and they cease their assault, carrying the bird with them. This was originally not a part of the script. Avery had to talk Gans into the idea. Ironically, Ferland was the first actress hired for the production, despite Gans fearing that he would have to delay production to find a child actress capable of playing 3 parts. Silent Hill contains a vast amount of Christian symbolism. The 3 worlds are meant to symbolically represent heaven, the real world, hell, the other world, and purgatory, or the fog world. Biblical quotes are used to highlight Alessa's story, and various characters represent figures from the Bible. Rose as the Virgin Mary, and Sharon, Alessa, and Dark Alessa as the Holy Trinity. In the beginning of the film, after Rose saves Sharon, Sharon is coloring under a tree. The pencil she is holding changes from yellow to red between shots. Rose's locket disappears in a shot while she explores the fog world, replaced with a chain link. When Chris gets out of the car at Smitty's, he is holding a picture of Rose in his hand. In the next shot, he takes the picture out of his jacket pocket. When the Armless Man comes out from behind the wire gate and begins to walk over to Sybil and Rose, Sybil puts her left hand up onto her gun twice between shots, before beginning to shoot it. When Chris asks about Rose at the garage, the mechanic is working on a Dodge Magnum with a West Virginia license plate on the front of the car. West Virginia doesn't require, nor is it possible to have, a state license plate on the front of the car. When Christopher breaks into the Brahms Archives offices at around 12:59:45, the clear, visible, orange anodized end caps and typical wiring on the fluorescent tubes identify them as Kino Flow lights, a specialist type manufactured solely for the film industry. The arrangement is quite different to a conventional domestic lighting system. Orange end caps indicate a tungsten-balanced tube. Blue would be daylight. As the miners are trying to break down the washroom door, the camera pans over the door frame from Rose's side to the miner's side. Just as it settles into its final position, the sliding wall section they used to allow the camera to pan can be seen, sliding back into position on the left of the door frame. As the clergy attacks Sybil and Rose when they first enter the church, Rose's locket is pulled off and lands on the top step. However, when Christabella picks it up, it is one step from the top with no explanation as to how it got there. In the investigation report Chris finds in the Toluca County archives, a mistake can be found. The first is that on the folder the case number is number 5612, but on the investigation report itself the case number is 561. The second mistake is an inconsistency within the report. Lori Ayer's elbow can be seen sticking out of the bandaging used to give adult Alessa her burned appearance. When Alessa kills the long-haired cultist with barbed wire, the ladder Sharon is supposed to be tied to is clearly shown in the background without Sharon anywhere in sight. When Christopher is reading articles about Silent Hill on the internet, one newspaper mentions the case of a child who was kidnapped and murdered, with his corpse being dumped in a mine vent to never be recovered by the authorities. This newspaper probably was created for an earlier version of the script, as a very similar kidnapping case is later mentioned with the key difference that the victim was rescued alive by Sybil Bennett.